The ambulance siren screamed, but the flowers didn't budge. Karen Whitmore's prized petunias, perfectly aligned in ostentatious pots, stood like sentinels guarding her ego, not her street. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns whispered wealth, Karen's obsession with her homeowners association, HOA rules had turned a peaceful cul-de-sac into a battlefield. It was June 3, 2025, and the air was thick with summer heat and unspoken grudges. Nobody expected a widow to collapse or a neighborhood to erupt. Karen, 34, was the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek's HOA. Her emails were legendary. 5-page manifestos about mailbox uniformity, grass height, and, most infamously, her floral aesthetic ordinance. She'd mandated that every front yard must feature her curated selection of flowers, petunias, marigolds, and snapdragon syringed in precise patterns. Non-compliance meant fines, public shaming, or both. "It's about community pride," she'd say, her smile sharp as a razor. But everyone knew it was about control. Karen's own yard was a floral fortress, her pots blocking half the street, a deliberate flex of power. Neighbors grumbled but complied, fearing her wrath or the HOA's legal muscle. Across the street lived Thomas Reed, 42, a quiet mechanic who'd moved to Willow Creek after his wife, Ellen, died in a car accident 2 years prior. He lived with his mother, Margaret, 68, a frail widow with a heart condition and a stubborn streak. Margaret hated Karen's flowers. "They're gaudy," she'd mutter, watering her modest rosebush, the only plant she'd kept from her old home. Karen had fined her twice for non-compliant flora, but Margaret refused to replace her rosebush. "It's all I have left of my garden," she told Thomas, her voice trembling. Thomas, ever the peacemaker, paid the fines to avoid conflict, but the tension simmered. That evening, disaster struck. Margaret was in her kitchen, stirring soup, when her chest tightened. She gasped, clutching the counter, and collapsed. Thomas, working late in his garage, heard the crash and sprinted inside. His mother lay motionless, her face pale, her breathing shallow. He dialed 911, his hands shaking. "Hurry, please. She's not responding." The dispatcher promised an ambulance in minutes. Thomas cradled Margaret, whispering, "Hold on, Mom. They're coming." The ambulance raced toward Willow Creek, its siren piercing the dusk. But when it turned onto the cul-de-sac, it screeched to a halt. Karen's flower pots, lined up like a barricade, blocked the narrow street. The paramedics honked, but the pots were heavy, immovable without effort. Every second counted, and the ambulance was trapped 50 yards from Thomas's house. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the siren. "Move those damn flowers," shouted Carla, a nurse who lived next door. Others joined in, their voices rising in panic and anger. Karen appeared on her porch, arms crossed, her blonde bob gleaming under the streetlight. "Those pots are HOA approved," she said, her voice icy. "They're not blocking anything essential." The crowd gasped. Thomas, hearing the commotion, ran outside, his mother's pulse fading in his mind. "My mom's dying," he roared, his voice breaking. "Move them now." Karen flinched but held her ground. "You should have followed the rules, Thomas. This street is for beauty, not chaos." The standoff escalated. Carla shoved past Karen, trying to drag a pot aside, but it was bolted to the ground. Karen's doing, to prevent vandalism. The paramedics, now out of the ambulance, yelled for help. "We need to get through," one shouted. Neighbors surged forward, some tugging at the pots, others screaming at Karen. "You're killing her," a teenager yelled, tears streaming. Karen's composure cracked, but she doubled down. "This is private property. You can't touch them," she snapped, pulling out her phone to record the crowd, as if they were the villains. Thomas sprinted back to Margaret, carrying her frail body to the ambulance. His arms burned, his heart pounded, but he refused to let her go. The paramedics met him halfway, but precious minutes had been lost. They worked frantically, administering oxygen and CPR, but Margaret's heart was too weak. By the time they reached the hospital, she was gone. Thomas sat in the sterile waiting room, staring at his hands, stained with grease and guilt. He hadn't fought Karen's rules harder. He hadn't saved his mother. Word of Margaret's death spread like wildfire. By morning, Willow Creek was a powder keg. Social media exploded with posts condemning Karen and the HOA. Karen Kills trended on X, with photos of her flower pots captioned, "Beauty over lives." Neighbors organized a protest outside Karen's house, holding signs that read, "Flowers don't save lives," and "Justice for Margaret." Karen locked herself inside, blinds drawn, but her defiant posts on the HOA's private forum leaked. If Thomas had complied, this wouldn't have happened. The internet erupted further, doxing her address and flooding her inbox with hate. Karen's allies in the HOA tried to defend her, citing property rights and community standards. But the public wasn't having it. A local news crew arrived, interviewing Thomas, who spoke through tears. "She was all I had left," he said. "Those flowers meant more to Karen than my mom's life." The segment went viral, amplifying the outrage. Petitions circulated to dissolve the HOA, and lawyers offered to sue Karen pro bono. The cul-de-sac became a shrine, with neighbors leaving roses. Margaret's favorite where the ambulance had been blocked. Karen, cornered, issued a public apology on X, but it was a masterclass in non-accountability. "I'm saddened by the loss, but the HOA's rules are for everyone's benefit." The backlash intensified. Her employer, a local real estate firm, suspended her, citing public relations concerns. Her husband left her, unable to handle the scrutiny. Alone, Karen sat in her perfect house, surrounded by her perfect flowers, now wilting under neglect. She'd won her petty war but lost everything else. Thomas, meanwhile, grappled with grief and rage. He sold the house, unable to live where his mother died. Before leaving, he uprooted Margaret's rosebush and planted it at her grave, a quiet act of defiance. The neighborhood, once united by Karen's rules, fractured. Some rallied around Thomas. Others whispered he should have fought sooner. The HOA dissolved under legal pressure, but the scars remained. Willow Creek was no longer a have-nit, was a cautionary tale. The tragedy exposed deeper truths. Karen's obsession with control mirrored a society obsessed with appearances, where rules trumped humanity. Margaret's death wasn't just a failure of one woman's ego. It was a failure of a community that let petty power games fester. The flowers, once symbols of pride, became emblems of shame. Posts on X debated fiercely. Was Karen a monster, or a product of a system that rewarded rigidity? Was Thomas a victim, or complicit in his silence? In the end, Willow Creek's cul-de-sac stood empty, the flower pots gone, the street clear. But the weight of that night lingered, a bitter reminder that beauty, unchecked, can choke out life. Margaret's rosebush bloomed at her grave, a small rebellion against a world that prioritized petals over people. What do you think? Was Karen's obsession with control the true villain, or did the community's silence share the blame? Share your thoughts. Where does justice lie in a tragedy like this?